His life clung to our world by a single strand, slowly being torn away as more and more blood began to pool up around his body.
Anakin.
All I could do was stand over his body, frozen, in shock and fear. A sudden feeling of guilt was creeping over my body, overthinking my every thought. My eyes focused on his body, more specifically the crossbow bolt sticking out of him. Andrew reached down, grabbing the bolt and slowly tearing it from his body. Blood began to bubble up, the bolt slowly sliding out of his head and making a squishy noise as it did so. He eventually tore the bolt out of his head and tossed it aside, watching as blood began to gush out of the hole. Hunter sat beside him, suppressing the pain to try and lend help.
Anakin!
I turned my head, looking towards the body lying in the grass. The woman was certainly dead. That was certain, judging by the amount of bullets Andrew plugged her body with. However, in her hands lay the crossbow she had used to shoot Quinn with. My crossbow. The crossbow I had bought with my own money. The crossbow I carried with me every time we went hunting. The crossbow I had neglected to lock away and left sitting out in the open. She had taken the crossbow and I hadn't noticed till it was too late. This was all my fault.
Anakin!
Andrew shouted at me, and I turned, looking down at him. He turned to me and asked,
Help me get him inside! Now!
I nodded, kneeling down and grabbing his feet, while Andrew grabbed his head. Hunter managed to fight his way back to his feet, stumbling behind us as he continued to clutch his bloody wound. The three of us burst into the cabin, sending both Space and Axel stumbling back. They watched as we approached the table in the corner, lying Quinn down as his head slumped to the side. I checked for her pulse, while Andrew relentlessly wiped up the blood with a rag, which had already been soaked into a deep red color. He's breathing, I told them. I don't know for how long, though.
What the hell is going on?
Maddie exclaimed.
Bunch of pricks pulled up with their guns drawn!
Hunter answered as he sat down against the wall.
Oh my god.
Space exclaimed, covering her mouth as she backed up against the wall. Maddie stepped forward, shoving a disoriented Spencer out of the way and kneeling down, examining Hunter's wound. She then grabbed her blanket and began to use it to clean the wound, pushing down against the hole in his shoulder to stop the bleeding. Axel stepped forward, trying to get a closer look at Hunter's wound. I looked to him and then to Space, who rushed in front of him and pulled him and Julia back. The young girl was staring at the scene, crying. She was scared and confused about what was going on. How is he? I asked Andrew as he continued to apply pressure to his eye.
The wound isn't terrible,
He explained.
Luckily, it didn't go deep enough to damage the brain. That's the good news.
And the bad?
He's losing blood fast, and I don't think anyone here has the expertise to patch up a crossbow bolt to the eye, other than him.
Spencer reached down and picked up his game buddy.
So unless we find a doctor or a cloning machine, he's screwed.
Well, if you guys have an HDMI cord, I could hook him in.
Spencer!
Hunter, Andrew, and Maddie all shouted together. The young boy jumped in shock, stepping back with a frown on his face.
Sorry. Just trying to lighten the mood.
Andrew gestured for me to take over, and I moved forward, applying pressure to Quinn's wound, as he stepped back towards Spencer.
We don't need to lighten the mood, little boy Blue. We need to find a doctor before he fucking bleeds out.
Spencer stepped back, cowering in fear in response to Andrew's rage. He stood over him, glaring at him angrily before stepping away, scoffing at the boy's cowardice.
Whatever. You're no help.
He frowned, rushing over to the bed where his bag was lying. He opened up his blue backpack and pulled out his laptop, quickly setting it up on the bed and powering it on. Both Andrew and I were confused on why he was doing so, until he opened up his web browser, a list of nearby medical facilities popping up.
We got St. Quinn's Hospital about 30 minutes away, or a Tolan medical facility an hour to the east.
Spencer told us.
Whatever's closer.
Andrew replied. Spencer nodded, grabbing his phone off the table to dial the number. But before he could hit the green button, something Quinn said came to mind. I held my hand out. Spencer, wait. He stopped, taking his hand away from the phone. I thought back to what Quinn had said earlier.
On the way here, I decided to listen in on police frequencies. All police in the area were being redirected to search for a damaged recreational vehicle with a broken left headlight and the plate starting with 7CS.
Quinn explained to us. I turned around to look at the RV across the campsite, eyeing both the broken headlight and the 7CS on the license plate.
If I am correct, the police are after us. For what, I do not know, but I believe it may have something to do with the bombing. Being the only survivors, it is only natural that we are considered suspects. However, considering the state of this corrupted country of liberals, I have a feeling we may end up being blamed for this incident to cover up the true perpetrator's identity.
He told us. Quinn mentioned it to Space and I earlier, but I think the police are looking for us. I told them all.
What?
Are they coming to help us?
Julia asked in a soft tone, sniffling and wiping away her tears. Andrew walked over to the duffel bag, snatching another clip out of the side pocket and reloading his silver pistol.
More like coming to gun us down. How close are they?
Spencer began rapidly typing into his laptop, attempting to find a way to listen into their frequency like Quinn had done. Andrew stood in front of his computer, tapping his foot impatiently.
Come on, kid. We don't have all day. Pick up the pace.
He shouted.
All right, calm down!
Spencer shouted back. A few seconds later, he opened up the page, raising the volume as a police officer began to speak through the badly crackling microphone. We all stopped, listening to try and determine what they were saying.
Shots fired at Silver Lake Recreational Campsite. Wait for backup, or should I move in?
A woman spoke.
Suspect from the Greenbrook bombing was last seen in the area. Lock it down and wait for backup. Proceed with caution.
Another voice replied.
10-4, moving in through the south entrance to establish a perimeter.
Andrew cursed silently, slamming his fist against the wall.
Damn it!
I think they're on their way.
Spencer said in a scared tone.
Well, no shit, Sherlock. We gotta get out of here before they get here, or we're screwed.
Space stepped forward.
Relax, Andrew. Maybe if we just stay calm and surrender, they'll realize we're not responsible and release us.
Not likely, I told them. Andrew, Quinn, and I all engaged in a fatal shootout. And Luis probably still has weed stashed in the RV somewhere. If they find it, they'll never let us go.
Well, then where do we go? Just keep driving? We can't. We need a doctor.
If we can't stop at any hospitals and we can't stay here, then what are we supposed to do? I asked.
Stop the bleeding, clean the wound, bandage him up and hope for the best.
Spencer shook his head.
That'd never work. Without proper medical attention, he won't live more than a day.
Andrew glared at him.
Well, I don't see you suggesting anything. What? Do you want to call mercy? Shoot him with a fucking bandage bazooka? Do you have any actual fucking ideas?
Maybe I do! And maybe if you shut up, I'll just say it!
Typical Spencer. Still can't admit when you're wrong and can't think of a...
Both of you! Just shut the hell up!
Both Spencer and Andrew froze, turning to look at Maddie. Andrew scoffed at her shouting and stepped away, while Spencer continued to sit on the bed with an awkward look on his face. Maddie crossed her arms.
Andrew, continue with Quinn's treatment. Spencer, tell us your idea.
I forgot.
Maddie face-palmed, turning around to face Hunter as she shook her head in disappointment.
Are you kidding me?
Andrew sighed, pushing me aside as he stood over Quinn's body. He grabbed his hand, keeping his thumb over his neck to feel for a pulse as he stared down at his friend. His entire body was shaking, his lips quivering, as he tried to think of something. Spencer stood up, approaching Andrew with a frown. He reached out to grab his arm.
Hey, man. I'm sorry about before. Are you okay?
Andrew suddenly swung backwards, knocking Spencer to the floor before he could grab his arm. He spun around, shouting at him angrily.
Touch me again, and I'll beat your ass!
Hey! I instinctively jumped between the two, holding out my arm to keep him from doing anything else. Not here, and not now, I told him. He stopped, turning around to look back at Quinn. Spencer meanwhile brushed himself off, flickering a small spider off of his arm.
So we're out of ideas then? That's it?
Space asked.
We can cauterize the wound.
Andrew suggested. That's too big of a risk, and other than Quinn, I don't think anyone knows how to, I replied. Axel then stepped forward.
Does anyone know any doctors? Maybe someone won't give us up?
Andrew turned around, giving him a look that he hadn't given anyone in a long time. A look of both shock and brilliance.
Shit, kid. I think you might be onto something,
he exclaimed.
What are you talking about?
Andrew pushed past Spencer, rushing to his laptop, where he pulled up the social media profile of a young girl on Quinn's friend list.
I got it. Isabella Novato, student at the Indiana University School of Medicine.
He read to us.
He told me a few months ago that she was studying to become a doctor.
Does that mean she can help? I asked. He shrugged.
Maybe. I hope so.
I announced to the group, with determination in my voice. Then pack up your stuff, muffin sacks. We're going to Indiana. One by one, we began grabbing our things, and I helped Andrew pick up Quinn's body and carry him to the RV. One by one, we exited the cabin, supplies in hand, as sirens echoed throughout the campsite. We could hear them in the distance, so they had to be close. Andrew and I set Quinn's body down in the back before he raced to the driver's seat, starting up the car almost immediately after sitting down. He then backed us off the grass, and we sped off out of the campsite, leaving Silver Lake behind. Hours flew by, and soon we were speeding down the vacant road with a single quest in mind: getting Quinn to Indiana. Maddie and Spencer sat in the back, keeping a close eye on Quinn's body, resting in the back seat. He was alive and stable, but the wrong movement could mean certain death. The kids were there as well, Axel playing on Spencer's game buddy while Julia watched with interest. Up front, Space and I were sitting in the booth, while Andrew and Hunter sat in the passenger seat. Andrew sat in the passenger seat cleaning off the silver handgun I recognized as a Desert Eagle with a wet rag. Hunter was beside him, driving the RV, groaning with every bump in the road. Maddie had cleaned and patched up Hunter's wound, hopefully enough to keep him going until they got proper medical attention. Space was sitting across from me in the booth, skipping through a light novel and every once in a while glaring up at Andrew. While we were all a bit sick of his attitude, Space had never been around to see the brunt of it.
Hey, Annie? Is Chicago on the way to Indiana?
Space asked, as she poked at her phone, which wasn't loading anything. We had all turned our cell service off and removed our SIM cards, just in case the police could track us. I checked the map from Quinn's bag and nodded. About an hour or two before Indianapolis. Why?
No reason.
She replied, unconvincingly. I shrugged, putting the map back. I then turned to the side to see Spencer stood up, walking across the RV and approaching Andrew and Hunter. He asked politely,
Hey, do you guys know where the water is?
Hunter turned around and answered,
It's over in the footlocker under the...
Up your ass and around the corner.
Space suddenly stood up, stomping over to Andrew and shooting him a glare. Spencer stepped back as Andrew sighed, staring back at the road with a fixed look of irritation.
What is wrong with you? You're such a dick to Spencer and everyone else around you. I'm sick of it.
Space shouted at him. Andrew threw down his gun, getting up and standing over Space. Space was a whole foot shorter, though it didn't intimidate her one bit.
That damn kid has no right to touch me or even be here.
Well, excuse me. Who went up and made you God?
I may not be God, but I know damn well enough that someone like him shouldn't be with us. He's spineless, scrawny, and can't take any of this shit seriously. He should have died, not Luis. Maybe if Luis was here, then Quinn wouldn't be...
Andrew stumbled backward, Space huffing with her balled fist at the ready. None of us had ever threatened Andrew, nonetheless hit him.
He's gone. But he's still our friend. Disrespect him again and you will regret it.
Space told him in a slightly intimidating tone. She stomped back over to me, sitting next to me and picking up her book. I frowned, sinking into my seat as I continued to read the manga that Maddie had lent me from her small collection she had bundled in her backpack. Hours passed, the moon slowly lowering down over the horizon and being replaced by the sun, which slowly rose over the other side. Daytime had come, and Quinn was still alive, though, judging by the lapses in breathing and his slow pulse, not for very much longer. I yawned, stretching my arms as I awoke from a short nap. I sat up, turning to see Space getting up and approaching Andrew and Hunter. In the back, Spencer had curled into a ball beside Maddie, who was stroking his head calmly. She was also watching anime on her phone while she kept an eye on the still unconscious Quinn.
Where are we?
Space asked, curiously.
We're about to go through Chicago. Only another 3 hours till Indianapolis.
Andrew answered. Space took a deep breath before asking,
Is there any chance we could maybe stop in Chicago for a bit?
Andrew frowned, turning around and giving her a look like she was crazy. Both Hunter and I looked up as well, confused at her request.
Stop? You're kidding, right?
I'm not kidding, Andrew. There's something I need to do and I'm not leaving this country until I do it.
Well, sorry, princess, but the only thing that'll make me slow down now is a police car with a missile launcher attached to the fucking hood, or a goddamn hot dog stand. Because honestly, I'm pretty fucking hungry right now.
Fine. If you won't stop, then just drop me off. I'll meet you guys in Indiana.
To our surprise, she turned around, grabbing her small pink backpack off the ground. She grabbed her book and cat beanie before approaching the door. And before she could try and open it, I grabbed her hand. She turned around to face me, and I asked her, "What's going on?"
There's something I need to do, and I'm not going to let anyone stop me from doing it. And if a man's life is on the line, I don't want anyone to wait for me either. Just keep on going. I'll find a way out of here.
She said. "No way," I told her. "You're our friend, and I'm not letting you go out on your own. I'll come with you, and once you're done, we can meet back up with them."
Would you really do that?
For you, definitely.